As everyone are getting into the session here, this is week 2 in the xAPI cohort, spring 2024. We have a lot of things to cover today, so I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So for those of you who are new, I know there's a lot of new people to cohort here. And so we want to explain to you a little bit what cohort is. It's not specifically a course, but it's more peer-to-peer learning. And you can see what I've got there on the slides. We have those weekly web sessions. This is week 2 of those weekly web sessions. And then we would like you to form yourselves into teams, learning teams, project teams, whatever it may be, so that you take what you're learning here in cohort and in your teams and applying that so that you have a project. Because in week 12, we have the spring showcase. So we will ask you to show everyone what you've been working on for those for the weeks here. Now, of course, you have the ability to go into Slack and form your teams there, and I'll talk a little bit more about that a little later. But here in AirMeet, where we meet for our weekly sessions, we also have the ability to meet 24/7 during the entire cohort, and we do that in the lounge at the tables. And I'll talk to you more about that later. Now, you may be wondering, hey, I'm just here for the first time, or I don't know if I can fit myself into a project team. No worries. Do it as you want to. This is a cohort for you, peer-to-peer learning. So you can be an observer, you can just be a listening in, and you can also be fully engaged in a project. We had one team create a project charter, had all kinds of different things, and we've also had other people just kind of looking at the teams, learning a little bit, but not really participating. There's really no commitment. You can just watch the sessions, you can join the teams and learn at your own pace and contribute where you want to. Now, if you have any questions about anything, use the cohort Slack channel, #main, post your question there. Everyone should see main. And we have not only the people that are here for cohort for peer-to-peer learning, but there's a lot of people in cohort who have a lot of experience in xAPI, who are ready and willing to answer your questions. You can also discuss things and ask questions there. Now, if you have any questions about the cohort per se, like the emails, any kind of dates or anything like that, you can message me, Karen Gleason. I am in the Slack channel and you'll see me in there nudging the teams along, as well as, answering any kind of questions that I can. You can also email me. My email is there too. So if you have any questions about xAPI. And this brings us to week 2, facilitating xAPI adoption in multi-technology environments. We have Andy Whitaker with Rustici, who's going to take us through his presentation. However, I want to add a few things that the Guild does have for you, and that is this research report. You can take a deep dive into the heart of learning analytics with the research report, and I'm going to go ahead and post that in there. It is a great report that you can take, and there's the bit.ly there so you can download it. It is, I think, Megan Torrens contributed to the research report. And if you register by March 8th, you'll save $100 on learning and HR tech solutions. We're holding that April, excuse me, April 23rd through the 25th in Orlando, Florida. This is a rebrand of our Learning Solutions Conference. What we've done is we haven't changed Learning Solutions. It's still the great ID practical conference that you're used to. But we've also included some HR tech in there so as to give you a broader experience in the conference. It's going to be great. Please register to save that money now. And of course, if you are not a member of the Guild, let me put the link in there for the HR tech solutions. Uh, I think. we're just going to put the bit.ly in there, and I hope it's the correct one. There you go. So that should take you right to it. If it doesn't, you can log into learningguild.com, go to conferences, and go to Learning and HR Tech Solutions, and that will take you right to the website so that you can go ahead and register. Now, this cohort is put on by the Learning Guild. We are a member-driven organization, and we would love for you to become a member, because not only do we do things like this with the Guild, but we have a number of other free resources. We have a lot of articles, we have free webinars, plus when you become a member for free, you get automatic discounts to our face-to-face conferences, our online conferences, and you get all kinds of material to increase your LD practice. So I put a link in there. If you're not a member, please join. So now I'm going to take you through a few things with cohorts specifically. So if you look on there, we have program partners. We have, and they each have a Slack channel, because they're all going to be working on different projects that are related to xAPI. So if you see Bikey our gnome there, I don't he's on my desk somewhere, and I have a messy desk. But anyways, so Bikey the gnome there is representing our beginner group. And that beginner group has an incredible story behind it, because it is run by two ladies who came into xAPI cohort really not knowing a lot about xAPI. And that was last cohort in the fall. And they developed a lot of information, and they said, hey, we'd like to share this. And so we said, yes. So there have xAPI beginner cohort spring 2024 with hashtag team in front of it. They will take you through from the beginning. If you're totally new to xAPI, you should join their team, because you're going to learn a lot. We also have Build Capable and Torrance Learning, Risk, Veracity, and Learning Dojo. And all of their team names are underneath there. You can also find them in Slack. They are all going to be running projects during the cohort. And next week, week 3, you will learn more about their particular projects. Some have started, like the xAPI beginner. I believe Torrance Learning's cohort has, or team has started. Some of the others are starting as well. So here's our Slack workspace. And I took a screenshot just before we got on the air here for all the different teams. And there's hashtag team. And those are all going to be the learning teams, the project teams that you can join. And anyone can join any team. And I'll take you through how to do that if you don't see them on your menu there, because it's not available to you until you become a member. But I'll show you how to become a member. And you are also invited to create your own team. If you are joining cohort, or you've been thinking about it and say, hey, I think I want to try this with xAPI or learn about this, feel free to create your own team and post that team's information in hashtag main, which is also where all those questions, team invites, and announcements are going to be. But we also have hashtag discuss. So if you want to just kind of discuss things about xAPI, we have a number of channels created for you to do those discussions. So how do you go and find the teams? Well, generally there should be an invite in the hashtag main. So hopefully you will see that. But if you don't, all you need to do is go to channels, go to create a channel. This will take you how to create a team. And then once you create it, you start it off with hashtag team and whatever you want to name it. So you could name it Karen's team if you'd like, or you can name Karen's storyline team, or whatever it is. But that's how you create your own team if you have an idea. And then you post in hashtag main a description of your team with the hashtag team name, so that people can see, oh, there's going to be a storyline. Oh, I think I want to join that one. They're going to do this project and look at all these different ways of getting the statements using an LRS, blah, blah, blah. So that's the team that's how you can create teams. Now, to join teams, you would go to the channel, drop the little caret, and go to Browse Channels. And when you're taken to Browse Channels, it'll immediately show you everything. Now, since this particular Slack workspace has been available since cohort began years and years ago, there's so many different channels, and many of them are archived. So what you want to do is you want to sort by the newest channel so that you see all the teams that are there. And then, of course, the lounge and ear meet, which I referred to earlier, is where you can meet with your team. It's like almost like a mini Zoom session because you can have camera, microphone, share your screen, and there is a dedicated chat. If you want to, you can meet in there anytime you'd like during the time of the cohort. So it will be there, and you can, up to 125 people can join your table. Even if you see only 8 seats, you can have 125 people. And then lastly, yes, everything is recorded. And what you'll do is you'll log into AirMeet here. You'll find the numerous view schedule buttons and links because they're all over the reception page. And then you browse to that week and you will see a button that says watch replay. So it's as simple as that. We're also posting them in YouTube, and believe that link is posted on this in the Slack workspace under recordings and resources. Yep, that's right, Zolt. xAPI is like Fight Club. We don't talk about it. We just join and do it. So there you go. I love that, Zolt. Thank you so much for that. And I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'm going to turn things over to Andy. And he has 2 colleagues with him, Alicia and Tara, and they will be helping him in the background with questions and different things. And I'm going to go off camera as well. And go ahead, Andy. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks, Karen. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And a big thank you to the Learning Guild for inviting us to speak with the xAPI cohort today. Today, I'm going to spend just a little bit of time talking about the utilization of existing xAPI conformant technology, as well as the adoption of new xAPI technology, xAPI conformant technology within your L&D environments. And we should have some time at the end for questions, which I'll probably hold off on until the end, but that's Alicia and Tara are going to be helping out with culling some of those together. All right, so I think about this topic a lot like I think about planning for a big trip. Your journey will be far more successful if you spend a good amount of time planning ahead. Spend time thinking about where you want to go, who you'll be traveling with, and what you want to do when you get there. Before we dive in, just a brief bit of background on myself and the organization that I'm with. My name is Andy Whitaker. As Karen mentioned, I work for a company called Rustici Software based in the Nashville, Tennessee area. I've been with Rustici for over 11 years. I was brought on back in 2012, right around the time that the Experience API was being announced to the world. And I worked for several years as what we call the xAPI evangelist. So I was responsible for promoting the spec to our customers and to the broader e-learning industry, having conversations and webinars and conference speakers, speaking engagements like this. I'm now on the Rustici Software sales team, where I spend most of my time educating folks from around the world on our products and answering questions about the standards that our products support. For the folks who don't know, Rustici Software has a long history with the Experience API. We were responsible for writing the original version of the specification back in 2010, 2011. And we've been deeply involved with the spec work ever since, so for the last 12 or so years. We have products that we sell, but we're also one of the few places that you can come to online to get your standards-related questions answered. So be it xAPI, CMI5, even SCORM. We love having people reach out to us through our website, asking those questions. And I'm one of a handful of people here that would be able to help you with answers to those things. Okay, so now back to planning for our trip. The first thing we have to decide is, where do we want to go? When considering the adoption of xAPI conformant technology, we don't want to simply buy or license a solution simply because it supports the specification. We want to define what we're trying to accomplish, what goals we're trying to achieve first. This is akin to what we like to call starting with the end in mind and then working back from there. Once we understand where we want to go, we need to determine how we're going to get there. It's important to have a clear and comprehensive understanding of the tools your organization, and more specifically, you and your team already have access to. Looking at tools that are currently in your toolbox through the lens of where you want to go should help you identify if you have everything you need currently to start your journey, or if you're going to need to go out and buy some new gear for your trip. Lastly, you'll want to think about what a successful trip looks like. It's important for you and your team to determine and define this type of thing up front. Okay, so some people out here are probably a little bit like me when it comes to travel. I am guilty of always wanting the biggest and best trip possible. But some of our best vacations as a family have been simple and close to home. The same can be true with this process that you're all going through with exploring the Experience API, working on your cohort projects, things like that. Where you want to go can be simple, complicated, or somewhere in between. It's important to balance this type of technology adoption with the amount of available time and budgets that your team and organization have, but also with what's necessary to get your broader organization excited about tracking learning and development in this new way. On this slide, I've got a few high-level examples to kind of get you thinking about the type of trip that you might take with your organization around the Experience API. Going from simple to more complicated, start with simply experimenting with a new technology. Some organizations pride themselves on being innovative. They like to lean into new technologies. Even though xAPI has been an official specification for over 10 years, starting way back in like April of 2013, it's still uncharted territory for most organizations and worth experimenting with to see what's possible. Showing what's possible at a small scale can be exactly what an organization needs to take the next bigger step with their xAPI adoption. Tracking L&D activities that have previously gone untracked. You may have been having a difficult time understanding what learners are doing outside of your organization's traditional learning applications like an LMS or an LXP. Or maybe you even want to understand more about what learners are doing within your traditional courseware. And you think that gaining access to this additional data may be an unlock for your L&D department or your organization. Simply tracking more activities within L&D may be a worthwhile place to start, while opening your team's eyes to what's possible with this additional data that you're able to capture. And for now, the last one, answering questions that have historically been proven difficult to answer in the past. Perhaps you have questions you're interested in answering, but you're missing vital data on the L&D side of the organization. Or perhaps you have data that is in silos and you're interested in bringing that type of information together. This type of project tends to be a little bit more on the complicated side of things, as you may need to track activities that have never been tracked before, merging data from learning and development with data from other parts of the business, and reporting or visualizing that data in a learning analytics platform or LRS or BI tool like a Power BI or a Tableau. All right, so now that you've decided where you want to go, it's time to determine how you're going to get there. First, this is about, in my opinion, taking inventory of the solutions that you already have access to. When an organization decides to embark on their first xAPI adventure, we always recommend taking a look at the tools that are already at your disposal and determining, probably with the help of technology partners and vendors, which tools already have support for the Experience API. You might find that there are several. You might find that there are only a few. You might find that there are none. It's my experience, though, that most organizations are already creating courseware using an authoring tool that supports publishing content as a tin can or xAPI or CMI5 package. You might also have an LMS that supports tin can and CMI5 packages. And obviously that would be the easiest, those would be the easiest tools to look at getting started with. Keep in mind, in order to understand where you can go and how you're going to get there, it's vital to have a complete understanding of the capabilities of the tool already in your toolbox. Do you already have everything you need? Or again, do you need to go out and maybe buy new gear before you set out on your trip? It's also important to consider who your traveling companions will be, because you're likely going to need their assistance in some cases, and in some cases, their approval and sign off on your trip. These are people who have relationships in your organization with existing technology vendors and partners. Perhaps these are folks that own or have access to existing data that you might want to have access to. And those who can help you with the procurement process if you determine that there's new technology that you need to buy as an organization to help fill some gaps that you've identified. Oh, and you know what? I'm going back and forth, and I realized I didn't share I didn't switch slides on that one. My apologies. So stakeholders, a big part of the process as well. Okay, so I want to take a beat and dive into one simple example. As Karen was talking about projects and things like that, this might be something that some of you are already thinking about. Maybe it's something you've already started working towards. This is a project where you kind of use what you got. I mentioned the authoring tool, maybe a standards-based LMS or learning experience platform. When looking at the LMS or LXP through the lens of this project, there are a few questions that need to be asked and answered. Which e-learning standards does the LMS support? Just SCORM, or do they support tin can packages or CMI5 packages? Do they have an integrated xAPI conformant LRS? They may tell you that they do, but I have experiences with a lot of LMSs where they make this claim, but really all that they have is a database where xAPI JSON is parsed and stored, not technically an xAPI conformant LRS, which ultimately just makes it more difficult to get data out of the learning management system and perhaps put it somewhere else if you're interested in doing that. If the LMS does support an xAPI conformant LRS, does your organization have its own endpoint within their LRS? Or is all of the data that they're capturing with xAPI associated with a single endpoint? We've come across this from time to time as well. If it's a single LRS endpoint that all xAPI data for all of their customers is going into, it can be incredibly difficult to get your specific data out of that LMS's LRS, which is something that you might be interested in doing. If your organization has its own endpoint, will your LMS rather allow your organization to forward your xAPI statements from their LRS to an outside LRS? This is important if you ever want to take advantage of a standalone xAPI conformant LRS separate from the LMS, a learning analytics platform, or perhaps even a BI tool. And then lastly, does the LMS offer reporting utilizing the data in their own LRS? If they do, it would be great if they could show you examples of that type of reporting. Do a similar exercise with your authoring tool. A lot of folks might be using Storyline or something similar. We already know that there's support for xAPI and CMI5 within that authoring tool. But if you're using another authoring tool, ask them, does it support, or investigate, does it support publishing as tin can, sometimes called xAPI packages or CMI5 packages? If it does it support the generation of custom xAPI statements? This is useful if you have activities that you'd like to track inside of a course, but these activities might not be tracked by default. Okay, so over the last 10 or so years, I've worked with organizations that are using an authoring tool that supports xAPI outputs, but their LMS only supports the SCORM standard. If this is your organization, I want you all to know there are solutions that can help bridge the gap between until your LMS adds its own native support for xAPI, including an xAPI conformant LRS. There are a few solutions in the marketplace, but I'll go ahead and call out two options that we offer at Rustici Software. and that's going to be SCORM Cloud Dispatch and Content Controller. In both cases, you'll host your tin can or CMI5 package in our solution. For each tin can or CMI5 package imported, you'll export out what we call a SCORM dispatch package that will be imported into your SCORM conformant LMS. This will enable the tin can or CMI5 packages hosted in our solution to be accessed via the SCORM conformant learning management system. When launched by a learner via the LMS, the dispatch package will launch into whatever tin can or CMI5 package it represents. As the learner clicks through the course, the xAPI statements generated by the content will be stored in our solution's learning record store, while SCORM data will be automatically pushed back into your organization's learning management system. If you're using currently or plan on using a third-party learning analytics platform like Learning Locker, Yet, Veracity, Watershed, from our side, you will be able to forward your xAPI statements from our solution into your learning analytics platform or into some third-party LRS that you might be using. So it's a great way if you do have restrictions primarily on the LMS side of things, but you still want to create xAPI CMI5 conformant content and be able to track that type of content while making it still accessible through the SCORM conformant LMS. You have options, suffice to say. Okay, so while taking inventory, if you discover that there are technologies you're using currently that do not have support for xAPI or CMI5, but you'd like them to, this is when it's important to let your voice be heard. We sometimes call this rattling the cage. As a technology provider ourselves, I know that we make most of our roadmap decisions on customer input and requests. So I encourage you to share your interest in the xAPI spec with all of your vendors. Given your participation in this cohort, you'll be better prepared to help your technology partners understand why it's important to support the standard, not only for your organization, but for their other customers as well. So when should you speak up about this? We say early and often, but some specific moments in time that might be a little bit more strategic, specifically during a user conference. If your LMS or other technology providers have user conferences, this can be a great place, a great venue for sharing your interest in the Experience API and their adoption of it. During your contract and license renewal process with that vendor can be an interesting time to approach this topic. Even during your own organization's budgeting season, this may be an opportunity to propose some level of investment in this work. And again, Rustici Software as a technology provider, we tend to be more open to taking on outside work suggested by customers that has some amount of revenue attached with it. Okay, so when you're procuring new technology, you'll want to be sure that you first consult with stakeholders within your own organization so that everyone's on the same page going into this purchasing process. Here's a few questions to kind of think about and maybe ask folks that you're going to be working with, your traveling companions. Who will be impacted by this new technology? Who will the end users be? Who will the administrators be? Will this have an impact on content creators on the team? Which decision makers need to be involved in making these decisions? Will this purchase require executive approval? Further, are there existing systems such as an HRIS, an LMS, other systems like that need to be integrated with this new technology that you're looking to procure? Do these existing systems already have, or rather, does this new system already have any proprietary integrations with the new technology? Or can a standard like xAPI be leveraged? Who are the owners of the existing systems that might need to be integrated with? Will you require their buy-in or assistance to make this happen? Do all the systems need to share data using xAPI or some proprietary data? Okay. Do they have their own goals? Do your traveling companions have their own goals when it comes to reporting and analyzing data generated by this new technology? Do you have what you need to collect and report on the data that you might generate from this new technology? Do you also need to be looking into adopting a standalone learning record store or an xAPI conformant learning analytics platform, or perhaps a BI tool? There's also xAPI specific questions you'll want to ask any potential new vendor. An obvious one, do they support the xAPI spec? If they do, you may want to ask which version of the spec they currently support. Ideally, they have support for version 1.0.3, and they have plans to support 2.0 somewhere on their roadmap, hopefully their short to midterm roadmap. Be cautious if they're still using the very early 0.9 version, as this is rapidly being phased out. Rustici Software is kind of involved in that with our products and our customers at this moment. If they do not have support for xAPI, ask if they have plans to do so and on what time horizon. What might need to happen in order to accelerate this timeline? This is where offering some amount of investment may enable them to prioritize this work. If they do have support, are they capable of creating tin can or CMI5 packages? This can be important if yours is the type of organization that still wants all learning and training to originate from within the learning management system. So that launching moment is still important for you. What activities do they currently track? Are they able to share sample statements, not just the high level, I did this, but the full JSON or a large portion of the JSON that their statements consist of? This should give you some idea of the types of reports that you'll be able to create using data from their tool. What would be the process for expanding upon the activities that they currently track? How do they accept requests like that? Are they able to easily connect to and share statements with a third-party learning record store or xAPI conformant learning analytics platform? And again, like previously, do they provide their own reporting using xAPI statements? And if so, it'd be great to see some examples of that. All right, so you've now decided where you want to go and how you're going to get there. So how will you know if this was or is a successful trip ultimately? I want to go back to the high-level examples I previously shared and provide some simple example results just for food for thought ultimately. So if we go back to the simply experiment with new technology, imagine that you used tools already in your toolbox, your authoring tool, your learning management system. You were able to create a CMI5 package that includes custom statements. You successfully launched and tracked that within your learning management system. This would be great, but hopefully you were able to maybe take it a little bit further. Perhaps your LMS was capable of showing some enhanced reports based on this new data that your team and colleagues can get excited about. Or maybe you were able to forward statements from your LMS's LRS to a third-party LRS and show off some new reporting and data visualizations there. As for tracking the learning and development activities that have previously gone untracked, maybe during your time here in the cohort, you were able to build a simple tool that started tracking some of these activities that your team might be interested in understanding what people are doing. Maybe you're able to convince some current vendor to add xAPI support, or you were able to procure new technology that allowed you to track these new activities. And then lastly, answering the questions that have historically proven difficult to answer. You decided on a couple questions you'd like to answer related to perhaps a specific training program. Simple example, did learners who did X get Y result? Maybe you were able to track the traditional parts of the program by leveraging CMI5 courses launched from the LMS. You convinced an existing vendor to track activities related to this program. You were able to gain access to data from a specific part of the business that was responsible for capturing the results that you cared about related to this program. And maybe you were able to merge the data into a learning analytics platform, perhaps a BI tool, where you were able to successfully or attempt to successfully measure the correlation between the activities and the results. Hopefully you all have much better ideas when it comes to areas that you want to explore with xAPI within your organization. Very excited for all of you to be participating in the cohort this season. I'm positive that amazing things are going to happen amongst your teams and any projects that you're working on. So that's all I've got for you today. Relatively short presentation. Hopefully, some of these thoughts are going to be helpful with your current projects and maybe future projects with xAPI. Generally speaking, I tell this to everyone that I present to. If you have any questions about standards, yes, even the SCORM standard, and are interested, or you're perhaps interested in learning about solutions that we offer at Rustici Software, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always happy to help. You can find my email address here. I know Karen's going to share the slide deck with the team on Slack, so don't ever hesitate to reach out. Our mantra at Rustici Software is ask us anything really. And for folks that have some experience with that, they can attest that we are absolutely strive to live up to that ultimately. I haven't been looking at the questions doc, so perhaps there's been questions. I'm going to jump over there and see if, bear with me as I kind of bring myself up to speed. Okay, so Allison Lease, can you have an LRS without a learning management system? Answer from Duncan. Okay, great. So Duncan was able to answer that. I trust Duncan's answer on that particular question. Let's see. Anna Morales, is there documentation that goes far more in depth from the slide of what if your authoring tool supports xAPI, but your LMS does not? I'd love to learn more about this workflow. Yeah, and I think we've got some answers there. Also, candidly, these are conversations that are, oh, sorry, maybe you didn't answer this. Okay, so what I would say to that is that there are areas on rusticysoftware.com where we talk about some of those things. Candidly, the easiest way to understand that is just for us to have a conversation about it. So if you're open to it, we can keep it very brief. I promise to not be very salesy on those things. We don't tend to be very salesy here at Rustici Software. So yes, reach out to us. I'm happy to talk about it. It is one thing that I've experienced personally over the last decade or more of helping people kind of understand where to go and how to implement and leverage the spec, where people run up against a learning management system that doesn't support it and they feel like they have reached a dead end. And there are solutions to overcome that, which again, happy to talk about ways that we can help around that. Amanda asks, what do you do if your LMS does not report accurate information and the leadership team isn't interested in investing in a better LMS? Would an LRS solve this? I think the answer is perhaps. Ultimately, it's all going to start with what data you're able to generate. And is that data going to enable you to generate more interesting or more accurate reports that get your leadership excited about the things that you're doing or proposing? If you're limited in the types of reports that your LMS provides, which is not an unusual thing, most LMSs only care about completion and pass fail and scores and things like that. One option is to look at learning analytics platforms. I know Veracity is part of the cohort group. A lot of LAPs have kind of smaller instances or testing instances or evaluation instances where you can send some data into those applications and show some more interesting reporting than what might be able to be provided within the learning management system. I know our sister company Watershed has Watershed Essentials, which is an opportunity to do various things like that. Again, more questions about that, Amanda, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to spend some time talking through that with you. Another question, you may want to briefly explain the difference between xAPI and CMI5. Great. I will take just a brief moment to do that. So, okay, so really what I think what would be probably most helpful, because I used a few terms interchangeably here, xAPI or the Experience API, when I refer to that, primarily I'm referring to the specification itself. the tracking protocol, the data model that you might be implementing, other applications have been implementing to track activities in a xAPI sort of way. When we get into the packaging side of things, though, CMI5 is now the official packaging profile or the official packaging specification for web-based content that is being tracked using the Experience API. Prior to CMI5 existing, which it has now formally for a few years, in the very early days of xAPI, so going back all the way to 2012 and a little bit of time after that, there was something called a tin can package. If you go to a tool like Storyline and some other authoring tools, and you see the option to export as xAPI, and you do that, what would be exported from that authoring tool in most cases will be a .zip file. And if you unzip that package and look inside the folder, you should see a file that reads tincan.xml. So when we talk about packaged content that is tracked via the Experience API, but is not a CMI5 package, we tend to refer to that as a tin can package because of that tincan.xml file within it. There's more to the story here. In the early days, a tin can package was a way that Rustici software was recommending to the industry that you could package content that's being tracked using the Experience API within it, because there was not a formal sort of packaging profile or specification until the work of CMI5 was completed several years ago. So maybe a longer answer than you were hoping for, but that's how I typically describe it to people. We got a little bit more time. We've got William asking, I'm unclear how a course in an LMS sends statements. So this goes back to the packaging standards, right? LMSs typically expect for content to be packaged per a particular standard. So if you're used to the SCORM standard, content can be packaged as SCORM. SCORM is also your tracking protocol. There are some LMSs in the world these days, and there's more and more of them coming online every day, that support the CMI5 standard or specification, which is the official packaging launching profile for the Experience API specification. Some LMSs also support the old tin can specification. And so if LMSs support those two specifications, that is, typically the recommended way to introduce traditional e-learning content into a learning management system that can generate xAPI statements. Some LMSs have their own LRS that those statements get written to. Some LMSs require that you give them an LRS endpoint and credentials to some third-party LMS or LRS that you can send statements to as well. I know we're running up against time. I want to give probably the mic back over to Karen to wrap things up. Again, any more questions? I love talking about these things, and conversations are my favorite way to talk about these things. So if there's things that you want to discuss and learn more about, again, find my email address and I'll be happy to help. But with Karen, I'll hand it back to you to kind of wrap things up, if that's okay.
Sure. Thanks so much, Andy. That is a great presentation. And like he said, I'll be posting a PDF of his deck into the Slack workspace. So you will see that under resources and recordings, or recording and resources. I forget which way it is. One last question, because I think it's important to understand this. So
Yeah.
someone asked, is xAPI is the spec/framework, and CMI5 is the file format syntax. Is that correct? Yeah.
I typically wouldn't. I mean, that could be a way to describe it. I tend to be more simplistic in my wording. I refer to CMI5 as the kind of spec approved way to package and launch content. And within a CMI5 package, obviously you are then leveraging the Experience API to track the learner's engagement with that content. But CMI5 provides us with the rules. CMI5 is the closest thing in my mind in the xAPI world that we have to SCORM. SCORM back in the day defined how a piece of content was packaged and how it was tracked when launched from an LMS. CMI5 is similar in my mind. It is defining the way that the content gets packaged up, but also it leverages the Experience API as the way to track those things. And primarily it's about launching content. And when people think about launching content, most people think about that in the context of a learning management system. So yeah, where your words might be accurate, they're not the words that I would use. So I might not say 100% because I might not understand all of what those words mean, syntax, whatever. But that's how I would describe CMI5.
Great. I just wanted to put that in front of you. And some people have answered in chat too. So I
Yeah,
think
great.
that will add to the conversation. And with
Wonderful.
that, I am going to go ahead and close us out. So thank you so much, Andy. Thank you to
Right.
Alicia and Tara for assisting him in the background here. And just so you know, you can go out to those tables right now, meet with your team and discuss things, or just go out to a table and change the title to discuss something if you want. And you are welcome to do that throughout the length of cohort 24/7. With that, we'll see you next week at week 3 when we're going to talk more about our project teams and our program partners. So thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.